2nd, 2025 Environmental Resources Committee to order. We will start with the first item, to pledge allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Yeah. Yep. All righty. Move on to item number 3, public comment. We have 3 people signed up for public comment. We will start with Dean Beck. You can come up and state your name and municipality, please.
Hi, Dean Beck, Town of Easton Chairman. I've got 2 issues I want to bring up. This manure management, I just read the revision that I got sent today. The mandatory buffer, I'm not understanding. I didn't know that that was going to be a mandatory buffer on all farmland. And is that going to apply to everybody else's land also? That they have to stay away from the creek? That whole process still bothers me because I'm afraid once this gets implemented, there's going to be more issues coming along with it and more rules. And it's not going to make being in agriculture any easier. I understand we need clean water, but at what cost? My second concern is the lack of, with solar, we have a potential of a large solar array going out in our town, 1,000 acres, and the adjoining town, also 1,000 acres. I've brought it up at the county level. I hear nothing but crickets. There is no support from the county whatsoever. I realize the laws are kind of against us because of the Public Service Commission makes that decision, but there is no local control, and our people that are going to be surrounded by them have no say. And I look at it, 2/3 of that money that comes from that power is going to go to the county. You're going to get a check. We're the ones that got to live in it. We get 1/3, and the people don't want it. They don't want it around them. The other part is public safety. We have to provide fire and protection. They're going to put battery banks in with these. How are we as a town supposed to be able to fight a fire if one of them catch on fire? And who's going to foot that bill? Or if they fail and they leave it sit there, who cleans it up? That's all I got.
Okay, next up, Becky Tetreault.
Becky Tetreault. Hi, I'm actually one of the residents of the town of Easton that Dean Beck is our chairman for. I know some of you on the board, my board members here that represents my township, and I want to directly, indirectly approach all of you, but I run a wedding venue out in the town of Easton named Tansy Hill Farm, and some of you have been there, some of you watching online. Some of the board members are friends of mine. I've hosted events there. It's been a great part of the community. I've run that venue for 12 years. My husband and I moved back here. I grew up and born and raised in Merrill. We moved back here in 2011 and have not taken a vacation until this year, and we have poured every penny we can scrape together to improve our property. It's a century-old farm, 1914. We've been hosting weddings since 2013, and that is our source of income. My neighbors across the road, 2 sweet little old sisters, one died 2 years ago, and the nephew now has the right to decide how the land's going to be used. He signed up with Durrell, the solar array. The adjoining property to where my brides get married is going to be, if this follows through, it's going to be a solar farm. I'm going to be landlocked. My view on my front porch and my dining room window will be 30 yards from solar farm. One, I have a concern. Obviously, that's going to put me out of business. No bride is going to be wanting a solar farm in their backyard. 2, this is a 30-year contract, potentially 60 years likely, if this is a success for Doral, they have first dibs on re-signing. Now, the public doesn't know this. The community doesn't know this. They've been aggressive salesmen. They've gone around to all the farms that look like, you know, they're a little run down, but they're renting out to local farmers. I know all the farmers in my community. I love them. I love seeing the tractors. I love the round bales. We have a great community. I'm just one little peon in Marathon County, which is our largest county in Wisconsin. I'm one little peon, but I'm representing everyone I've talked to agrees with me. This has to stop, and we don't have to take our orders from 3 little unelected people in Madison. I think you guys need to do your job as a county board. I have door knocked for a lot of you. I have helped you get into a seat in 2020. I'm asking for your help now to help me. That's why we elected you to represent us. I guess there has to be money. Money talks, and I feel like at this point, we need to talk about the future and the principle. This is an immoral. We're so proud. We're America's dairy land. We're going to be America's energy grid in Wisconsin if all this goes through. 1,000 acres in Little Easton, 1,000 acres in the town of Wausau. Anywhere you see ginseng, you're going to see a solar farm. They have already signed over all those contracts. The only option we have is for the CPC, the county planning and zoning, to be able to say, no, farmland is sacred. It's sacred, and we lose it for 60 years. Say the next generation has a vision, wants to do a wedding barn, agritourism, any of those things. There's a lot of sustainable farming that's coming back to our community. Forget it. You have no rights. You cannot step a toe. You cannot hunt. You have lost your land. And when all these little solar farms sell out, they're all going to sell to Alliant and WPS. They're going to be the owners of all these solar farms. They're all going to sell up. We're going to lose all of our land in Wisconsin. It's going to change the view. Honestly, I get it. That's like a personal thing for me. It's depressing. I lived in the Twin Cities, South Minneapolis, for a long time, and I saved and saved and saved so I could come back home to where my roots were and buy this heirloom farm and put my roots down. I've worked hard to have relationships with my neighbors. We have an awesome community. I love the town of Easton. I love my board. We know each other. But those of you making decisions might be here in the city not realizing, well, you want to go out for a little drive in the country? Well, you want to enjoy the seasons? You're going to have to look above all the solar farms. And just a little bit north of me, it's all wooded. What happens to all my small farmer neighbors when they lose their farmland? They can't go a little farther north, east, west. It's all woods. Eau Claire Dells and up, that's pretty heavily densely wooded. So all of the farmland that these heirloom farms, they've been trying to nurture all these years and try to keep the family farm going, which has a million challenges in its own. Most of my farmers have full-time jobs and they farm at night. So it's a struggle enough. And so I'm expecting, like my chairman said, it's been crickets. I expect my board to either order the zoning department to, I know that the zoning changes are happening. You can change the wording. I'm asking for farmland to be protected. Sound good?
Okay, next up, we have James Edis.
Afternoon, everyone. I was here last month too, Town of Easton. I'm sure all of you read the email that I sent out that Mike forwarded on. I'm here to make a last-ditch effort to ask you not to approve this ordinance. I don't believe it's fair and it's just. And what particularly struck me as disconcerting is at the last meeting when Christie was up there and said, well, we produced more phosphorus in Marathon County than what we need. Unfortunately, phosphorus is a vital nutrient to all the plants that we grow, corn, beans, alfalfa. Without it, you don't have good crops. So we have to put it on. and most of the land in Marathon County is actually phosphorus deficient, especially in our neck of the woods in eastern Marathon County. And it struck me that when she got up there and she made the comment that, well, we're doing this to save the shrimp farmers in the Gulf. And wouldn't it make everyone feel nice to have a part in saving the shrimp farmers in the Gulf? At that point, it said, to me, it said, this was no longer about doing the right thing, about saving the land. This is all based on emotion. This ordinance is not necessary. 17 years ago, an ordinance was put in place to help this county regulate and help the farmers as far as with their runoff. 17 years, 17 years. Hundreds of farms gone in this county, and they've turned into bigger farms, and the cow numbers have stayed the same. The majority of cows are under a nutrient management plan already. What has been done in 17 years that all of a sudden now, that wasn't done, that all of a sudden now will be done under this new ordinance? It's ludicrous. It's stupid. There is no reason for this. Why can't it be done under what's already existing? Why do you have to go out and punish us small farms that have really very little impact on this whatsoever in the rest of the part of the county? There is no reason for this ordinance, none whatsoever. Make them work under what's already established and get it done that way. Leave the rest of us alone that are out there trying to make a living without all this extra stuff going on. So I ask you one last time to consider your vote on this ordinance. I'm not against having clean water. I'm not against having buffer strips. I'm not against a nutrient management plan. But I am against more government overreach, especially when it comes to us small family farms that are just out there trying to make a living. I ask you one time, do not pass this ordinance. Let them work under what's already established. Thank you.
All righty, thank you, everybody. We will now move on to item number 4, the approval of the November 4th, 2025 committee minutes. Supervisor Kroll.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I actually have a request for a change under the motion, or under the minutes, item 7B, the third action. It says it was motion and seconded to resend instead of rescind. I think that's a pretty important error to check. So if we can just get that changed, that'd be great.
Okay. Anybody else?
This is Bill Wolcott. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
I thought I was on the docket for public comment. I'm pretty new to calling into meetings such as this. Can I still speak?
Yeah, sure. If you could just state your name and municipality, please.
Randall Wolcott, Town of Marathon.
Okay, what can you tell us?
Well, I did not call in to talk about solar issues, but I did want to comment briefly on the first two speakers who so eloquently summed up the situation. And I would echo their sentiments that I have grave concerns about what's going on with that. And I do very highly ask of the ERC committee to take into account what they said. That's all I want to say about that. Mostly I wanted to call in about the manure ordinance. I have a small farm in the town of Marathon. I raise heifers. I have a few pigs, some chickens. Mostly I'm a cash cropper. I do have 60 acres of cropland that I rent out to the Hmong farmers to grow vegetables. I really cherish my relationship with them. They've gotten to be my friends. They market their vegetables far and wide, all the way from Minocqua to Madison, Marshfield, Wisconsin Rapids, Wausau, Weston, our little Marathon City Farmers Market. Anyhow, the way they try to maximize their season, they want me to work their land very early and They want to go till they can as late as they possibly can go. So the only time I have to really spread manure on their land, which they prefer because they're trying to be organic, is in the winter months. So I thought of them and myself about what I was going to do when I saw the first proposal for the 2 months winter ban. So it didn't take me long to call up Kirsty and express my concern about that. And my land is very, very flat. I pretty much have the minimum erosion you can have on my home farm here at least, and probably closer to zero erosion. It's flat as a floor. So there's that. And so Kirsty had mentioned that actually there was, I think several groups and entities that said we should have a working group. And I was very pleased with Kirsty and Matt and whoever gave the okay for the work group. And I guess then once that happened, I was concerned that maybe, as maybe some of you have experienced, that there's listening sessions, work groups, whatever, and then it just turns out to be a rubber stamp, that they just go ahead with what they were going to do anyway, just to be able to say they did it. And so I was concerned about that, but that's not what happened at all. This was a very good work group. We were listened to. We had quite a diverse representation at the table. I was listened to as a small farm, which I was very pleased about. And I was very pleased at the direction the whole conversation went to, which was nutrient management plans and buffers, because a little farm like mine, I can't put in a manure pit. I'm 63 years old. I just want to work with the Asians and do my farming. My manure would qualify as a slurry or maybe even a liquid because it comes out of a manure auger. And so, yes, this would affect me. And the nutrient management plan has options. I can still spread where it's suitable to in the winter, and it also tells me where I can't spread, and I'm perfectly fine with that. And so in the end, at the end of the day, after all of our meetings, and I'm also very active in Farm Bureau, so I felt I was speaking for Farm Bureau and for myself, and both Farm Bureau and myself are pleased with how this went. And I think it's a situation we can live with this ordinance as written. I know there's details that need to be worked out, but I'm confident they will be. And Kirsty and Matt have been nothing but cordial to us and have listened. And so I guess that's about all I wanted to say about that. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Okay, now we will go back to item number 4, approval of the November 4th, 2025 committee minutes. Supervisor Schoenborn. Supervisor Schoenborn makes a motion to approve. Supervisor DeBrew with the second. Any discussion?
And just to be clear, Mr. Chair, that is with the amendments?
That is with the typo that is being corrected.
Thanks.
Is that what the motion and the second agree with you? Okay, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Item number 5, operational functions required by statute, ordinance, or resolution. First, I would like to ask everybody to please mute your phone. Marathon County Environmental Resources Committee is now meeting in a public hearing on the location, plans, specifications, and purpose for the following projects. Item 5A1, Chad Deach, rural residential and general agriculture to rural residential in the town of Elderon. I would like to now introduce the members of the committee. I am Supervisor Mike Ritter. We have Supervisor Rick Seefelt, Supervisor DeBrew, Supervisor Drabeck, Supervisor Kroll, Supervisor Schoenborn, Supervisor Ungerer, Supervisor Kurth. We have Tom Miller, our farm representative, and Marilyn Bend, our town's representative. Also present, we have Lori Miskimmons, the director of CPZ, Kirsty Heidenreich, our county conservationist, Shad Harvey, land resources manager, Nicole Deloney, office manager, Garrett Poggle, land use specialist, and Matt Repking, I'm not sure what his title is, but he's here too. The establishment of the ERC committee is required by law for purposes of administration of county ordinances and land conservation programs. This committee must follow state laws and local ordinances as written. The committee cannot change or ignore any part of the ordinance or state laws must apply the laws as written. The purpose of this committee is to hear and decide on proposed ordinances and ordinance revisions, rezoning petitions, and provide direction on land conservation and planning programs. The ERC committee will give a full and fair hearing to anyone applying for a rezone petition. A tape recording is being made of the meeting, which will assist in the preparation of written hearing minutes. The committee is interested in hearing all pertinent comments and questions. Each hearing will be opened by reading the public notice and allowing staff to present a staff report, including evidence from any on-site inspection. The applicant and anyone wishing to testify shall be sworn in and allowed to give testimony. Witnesses will be called in the order of those: first in favor, second opposed, and then third as interested. The committee may ask questions of the zoning staff and applicant. It is necessary that we set a reasonable time limit on individual statements and on the overall length of the hearing. To promote orderly discussion, anyone wishing to present oral testimony or ask questions relating to the hearing should state your name, present your testimony or question so it becomes part of the official record. We request you avoid repetition. Once the committee has all the necessary facts, the chairman will close the hearing, allowing no further testimony, and the committee will deliberate and decide in front of the public whether the applicant has met the standards in the ordinance. No additional testimony from the public is allowed during the deliberation. However, the committee may question staff for purposes of clarification. After a decision is made, the committee will proceed to the next hearing. Many of the decisions made by the committee are a recommendation to the Marathon County Board of Supervisors, who will take up the matter at a future county board meeting. Contact staff for more information regarding this county board process. The committee will now hear the application of 5A1. Chad Deach, rural residential and general agriculture to rural residential, town of Elderon. Garrett, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
I do.
All right.
All right, this is for Chad Deach. Petition to rezone land, staff report December 2nd, 2025 for the Environmental Resources Committee. The petitioner is Chad Deach, located at 214015 State Highway 49, Eland, Wisconsin, 54427. Property owner is the same. Area proposed to be rezoned is located south of the intersection of Pike Lake Road and State Highway 49. The petition of Chad Deach to amend the General Code of Ordinance for Marathon County Chapter 17 zoning code to rezone lands from RR rural residential and GA general agriculture to RR rural residential, described as Lot 1 of CSM number 18166 and recorded as document number 1767681 in volume 89, page 23, and located in the southwest quarter of the northwest quarter of section 24, township 27 north, range 10 east, town of Elderon. Parent parcel number is listed. So you'll notice that in the staff report, we do have a resolution. It did not make its way into the packet. We did receive it yesterday. So I'll be presenting it as the small change in the staff report compared to what you have in your packet. So the town of Elderon Town Board met November 11th, 2025. Marathon County's Environmental Resources Committee is meeting today, December 2nd, 2025 at 3 p.m. A legal advertisement was published in the Wausau Daily Herald. Notice of the zoning change request was also sent by regular mail to adjacent property owners within 300 feet of the subject property. On November 11th, 2025, the Town of Elderon Town Board recommended approval to Marathon County's Environmental Resources Committee. Staff recommendation, the rezone meets all the zoning district standards as it relates to size, frontage, access, and dimension. The rezone also appears to be consistent with the purpose and intent of the town's comprehensive plan and as indicated by a town resolution. Based on the information provided above, findings of fact, conclusions of law, and the town's recommendation, it appears the rezone request meets all the rezone criteria and standards for rezoning. Therefore, CPZ staff recommend that the Environmental Resources Committee recommend approval to Marathon County Board of Supervisors. Should the rezone be approved by Marathon County Board of Supervisors, CPZ staff recommend that the town update its comprehensive plan to reflect the zoning change if applicable.
Okay, does anybody have questions for staff? Okay, no questions for staff. I will ask, is there anybody present or online that would like to speak in favor of item 5A1? One more time, is there anybody that would like to speak in favor of item 5A1? Is there anybody that would like to speak against item 5A1? Once again, is there anybody that would like to speak against item 5A1? I'll call once. Is there anybody who would like to speak as interested in item 5A1? Hearing none, I will declare this hearing closed and the committee will deliberate. Supervisor Seefeld.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will make a motion for the petition of Chad Deachy to amend the Code of Ordinance of the Ordinance of Marathon County, Chapter 17 Zoning Committee to rezone land from RR Rural Residential to GA General Agriculture to RR Rural Residential in the town of Elderon and to pass the conclusions of law and move it to the county board for its approval.
Supervisor Seefeld with a motion. Do I have a second? Supervisor Sonneborn with a second. Any further comment? No further comment. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We will now move on to item 5B. We have none. 5C, review and possible recommendations to the county board for its consideration. 5C1, approval of the annual county forest work plan. Do we?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Sorry about that. I needed a plug-in for my computer. In your packet is the annual county forest work plan, and attached to that is the county wildlife management plan. These are plans that we need to put forward and approved by the county board each year based on our requirements from county forest law and the DNR. So we did present them to the Forestry Recreation Committee this afternoon. There wasn't any questions, and they did approve them to move forward to today. So I can go through them if you'd like, or I can answer any questions you might have. But they're a typical work plan that's based off of our normal operations each year. Then we update, with numbers, number of acres that we're going to manage, and some of the extra programs that we're doing, but nothing out of the ordinary this year.
Okay, does anybody have any questions for Jamie on the work plan? Okay, I guess we'll be looking for a motion to approve. Anybody want to make that motion? Supervisor Seefeld.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will make a motion to approve the, the annual county forest work plan and forward for its approval to the county board.
Supervisor Seefeld with the motion. Supervisor Drabek with the second. Any further comment? Okay, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? That motion carries. We will move on to item 5C2, application for county forest acreage shared loan payment.
Mr. Chair, I also have Tom Loveland, I think is online if you have any questions, our county forester or forest administrator. But this is also a resolution that we bring forward each year, the application that the County Forest Acreage Share Loan Program that we are involved with, where loan monies are repaid through 20% of the timber, or the tax on the timber revenue that we get from our timber sales. And this just allows us to enter into that program each year through our requirements as well. And this is just an annual housekeeping item, I guess, to stay in this program.
Okay, does anybody have any questions for Jamie on this one? Okay, then I guess we'll need a motion to approve or disapprove. Supervisor Kroll.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to approve the County Forest Acreage Shared Loan Payment Plan.
Supervisor Kroll with a motion to approve. Supervisor Kirst with the second. Any further comment? All right, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? And that motion carries. Item 5D, we have none, so we'll move on to item 6, educational presentations, outcome monitoring reports, and committee discussion. 6A, department updates. 6A1, updates on proposed amendments to the Marathon County General Code of Ordinances, Chapter 17 zoning code.
All right, I just wanted to give the committee a bit of an update. So last meeting, the committee had directed staff to reach out to the townships regarding the fence amendment that was proposed by Gunther, and whether or not we were incorporating that into the comprehensive revision. We have sent that to the towns. We did just complete some extra follow-up to make sure that they get it on their agendas to discuss it again. Our plan is to have the comprehensive revision public hearing next month, next meeting. But I did want to let you know what we received so far. We only heard back from one town regarding that fence amendment. And if you can recall, the fence amendment was essentially to allow 12-foot fences. Didn't matter what part of the yard it was in industrial, commercial zoning districts. The town of Brighton was able to get it on their last month's agenda when we did originally send this out. And their comment was, we oppose 12-foot height and believe it to be more effective to use electronic surveillance techniques with a standard fence size. So they were opposed to the amendment. Again, this is the only one we received. We will work to do our best to get as many comments back as we can regarding this, so you guys can make your decision. When it comes to next month, I'll bring both to the meeting, ordinance with this particular change, as well as one without. That way we can kind of hold the meeting and the board can decide based on those comments how we want to proceed. Is there any questions for me? It was just a real brief update.
Any questions for Shad on this? All right, thank you. So now we can move on to item 6A2, staff funding update related to recent federal shutdown.
Thank you, Chair Ritter. I'll go first, and then Administrator Leonard can add anything that I missed. We did have this on the agenda last month, just to give you all an update as to what was going on. We did not get the agenda amended in time. That's why we had to pull it. As you know, since then, the federal government has reopened, so that's good news. But we do have a conservation specialist within our office that does receive federal funding from the USDA for their position. So when the federal government shut down, we did have to take a look at how we would continue or what we would do in absence of that funding. As you know, historically, when the federal government reopens, they do tend to give that back pay. So we are still applying for the full reimbursement. Our budget is laid out as a projected plan every year so that we have an idea of how we're going to fund our personnel, but we did look at our budget and knew that we had administrative funds that could continue to carry them through in absence of the federal funding. But now, again, since the federal government is reopened, we are applying for the full reimbursement until we hear otherwise. But do you want to add anything else, Administrator Leonard?
No, you did a great job. It's consistent with past practice in the event of not that those things happen all that often, but similar to grant-funded positions, if the grant funding goes away, we understand that we come back and get direction from the governing body on how to proceed. So had the government shutdown persisted and those funding, that funding not been solidified, we would have come back and laid out some options for you. As Lori said, we don't anticipate that being an issue with the government reopened and the ability to apply for those funds. Also, given the fact that we would likely have had some personnel vacancy as we got to the end of the year, we would have known what our personnel budget was in conservation planning and zoning. It wasn't overly stressful for us at that point because we knew we would have some options for you that would be palatable. But in light of all things that have happened since your last meeting, no action or direction needed, but if it ever happens again, that's kind of the process that we would take.
Any questions on this? No? Okay. We can move on to, Marilyn.
How long when do you think you'll be able to get the money back, and how long will it take? Do you have to apply to get that money back?
We do quarterly reimbursements, so we will apply for fourth quarter at the beginning of January, essentially, so.
And how long will it take the government to get the money back to you?
That varies from reimbursement to reimbursement, but that has nothing really to do with the federal shutdown. That's just, I'd say usually it takes about 2 months before we're reimbursed for the previous quarter, so.
Okay, any other questions or comments? We're good? All right, item 6A2, or 6A3, nutrient management planning, overview of options for farmers to write and implement a nutrient management plan.
Grabbed the wrong mouse.
Good afternoon, everyone. Kirsty Heidenreich. I am joined by Matt Repking, who is our conservation analyst. But 10 points for Mr. Chairman for remembering to introduce Matt this time. So wonderful, appreciate that. I'm actually just gonna kind of tee up this topic and then let Matt cover the majority of what we're talking about here with nutrient management. This topic is on the agenda because one of our ERC committee members had asked us to put it on the agenda because we have had so many wonderful conversations revolving around nutrient management since this all started. It ended up being the topic of our open houses, and a lot of the time we spent in our work group, we talked about nutrient management. And what we keep hearing over and over is, wow, I didn't know all that you guys do or offer to try to help folks get these nutrient management plans in place. So for clarity and to help get the information out there, we wanted just to take a couple of minutes to go through this process with you all. So that way, when you're also getting questions from folks out in your neck of the woods, you also have this better understanding of these are the resources that the county has available to you. These are the staff members that are available to help you out. And we promise we will do whatever we can to make this easy and simple for you. So that's why this topic's on the agenda today. And please just know that this is a very comprehensive overview, and it's always easiest to have some of these conversations directly with folks. So even if people want to call us and just get a general idea of what it would look like if they were looking at putting a nutrient management plan into place, we can walk them through that step by step. But hopefully after today's little mini 5-minute training session, you'll be able to walk people through those steps of how they can get a nutrient management plan in place. So I will let Matt take it over. Matt and also Kirk Langfoss, who is another one of our conservation analysts, our senior conservation staff. They're both CCAs, or certified crop advisors. So those are the types of agronomists that can legally sign off and approve nutrient management plans. So there's not many counties in Wisconsin who have agronomists on staff in their conservation department. Some of the bigger conservation departments do, but the fact that we have 2 certified agronomists on staff in Marathon County is a tremendous benefit to landowners in Marathon County. Because if we didn't have them on staff, someone would have to go and pay an agronomist to review a plan and sign off on it. So, so Matt will take it away and walk you through the steps to a nutrient management plan.
So we've talked quite a bit as a group about all the benefits of nutrient management planning. I mean, probably the benefit I hear the most from a lot of farmers are that, one, they're looking at, what they're spending and what they're putting out there. And then that's really a big cost savings for them because they can really target the areas that they want to hit up and try to maximize their yields in those areas. But a big benefit also is really looking at those environmentally sensitive areas and meeting the setbacks, not putting nutrients down in those areas. So in Marathon County, we work with 5 other counties as a larger group with our trainings. You can see listed here. We also work with UW Extension and both North Central and Mid-State Tech. We've been doing these trainings, or Marathon County's been involved for almost 30 years. And the trainings are supported through a grant that we actually received from Department of Ag, and that's about $50,000 per year. The class locations, usually they're held January through March, and we usually have one in Wausau, Medford, a couple in Spencer. Those are kind of our big areas. And then also in Stevens Point and in Wood County down in Wisconsin Rapids. So we have a pretty wide area that we teach at and work with. So this is one question we get quite a bit, is what the actual costs are for the training. So the initial cost up front is, for a new nutrient management plan, is $260. But with the incentives through the class, the person is reimbursed $600. So a pretty good incentive to go, $340. For people that come once every 4 years, the refresher rate, that's $130. And then that person's actually reimbursed $300, so a $170 incentive. When the plans are actually turned in to us, then they receive another $100 incentive. So pretty good. And then there's also a soil sampling incentive that can be paid, and that's $9 per sample up to $750. Also, we do help farms soil sample, just so they get the procedure down and the technique of what they need to do. And we do have soil probes that people can borrow and use on their farms to sample. One other option that we do have is if somebody wants to test their manure, there is a $50 incentive for doing that also. So that would be approximately, it's about $25 per sample, so you can get about 2 samples for that much. So our farmer training class, for new participants, the class is about 12 hours. Usually it doesn't take that long. Usually it's closer to 8. And that would be over 3 class periods over separate weeks. So we meet once per week over 3 separate weeks. The refresher class, which is more or less just updating the plan, that's 2 class periods, about 4 hours each. We do both handwritten plans and SNAP Plus. Majority of plans that we write are on SNAP Plus, and computers are provided by the technical college, so we can always use their computers. And like Kirsty mentioned, Marathon County, we have CCAs, and there's also several other CCAs that we work with, certified cropping, professional agronomist from other counties and from the UW. So when farmers attend our class, they become essentially self-certified, so they can write a plan for themselves, but they're not certified to write plans for other people. When people come through our class, more than just a single person can come. There can be multiple people from a farm that attend. So on average, I would say more than likely, usually about 2 people attend per farm. So then that way they can either help each other work on it, or sometimes it's just one person to run the computer and the other to provide information. To stay certified, people just have to attend once every 4 years. We do have a number of people that come annually just to update their plan. It's just to come through the class, get things completed, and then they're done with it for the year. It's always a good reminder and a time for them to sit down and kind of budget out what their fertilizer is for the next year and what they're going to plant. For our classes, about 25% of nutrient management plans in Marathon County are farmer written. Total participation for the class is about 50 to 60 farms, and on average about 19,000 acres. We have a pretty good mix of farms. We have some cash grain guys, dairy farms, and then we also have grazers that come in too, and we work with them on finding areas with rotations and things. SNAP Plus is getting better as time goes on to handle the grazing, but it still is a work in progress with some of it. But the newest version does look better for that. So what else do we provide? county staff, with the guys that we work with, we provide them both with technical and ergonomic support to them. We'll have multiple guys call annually to get help with updating their plan, mapping, assistance with soil sampling. We also do manure spreader calibration, so we bring out large weigh scales and weigh spreaders, loaded, unloaded. We meet on farm as needed. Everybody that comes through the class, we generally follow up with them with one on-farm meeting after the class is completed, just to review their plan and go through it and make any updates that are needed. And we also provide ergonomic recommendations. So if guys get recommendations from their co-ops, we sometimes just provide a second set of eyes on those and say, you know, maybe you can reduce this fertilizer a little bit or change this around. So just a second opinion. For Marathon County, well, any county, there is cost share that's available. It's $40 per acre. It's a one-time payment. It's really just to get a nutrient management plan started. There's also cost sharing from NRCS that's available. And I don't know what those rates are offhand, but we can work with NRCS on those. And really, NMP kind of establishes the foundation for other forms of cost share. So once you have a nutrient management plan, you become eligible for cover crops, for no-till, for reduced tillage, and there's many other programs where nutrient management is really that first stepping stone to become eligible for other programs. And does anybody have any questions?
Any questions for Matt? No? All right, thank you. All right, so I guess now we will, we'll move on to item 7, policy issues, discussion and potential committee determination. 7A, discussion and potential action to move draft chapter 11.02 animal waste and cropland management ordinance amendments to state for legal review.
All right, so we're happy that this month we can give you a little bit of an update related to our animal waste ordinance open houses that we mentioned to you were upcoming at the last ERC meeting. So we wanted to be sure to offer these opportunities to folks to come and share their thoughts, voice concerns, ask questions. So we did have open houses on the west side out in Reebrock, centrally located in Wausau. We did have one specifically for town boards where we offered in-person and virtual options as well. And then the town of Reebrock also had a special farmer meeting for other issues that we also mentioned the animal waste ordinance at. We saw very low participation in these open houses, which were the opposite of what we saw in early 2025 when we had open houses where we're focused centrally just on manure spreading restrictions before we came up with these compromises with where we are at today. So we saw very high attendance, very long hours at those open houses. And this time, there just was not as much hubbub out in the communities about what we're proposing here. So, you know, Reebrock and Wausau, we had 5 people come. We had 1 person show up virtually for the meeting that we offered to town boards. And at those meetings, I mean, they were great. They're, you know, to summarize the open houses, there was not dissent that was there. It was both of the open houses, we had some folks come that were in support just to kind of come and be there and hear a little bit more. And then we had a couple of folks that came to ask questions as well. And even when we answered their questions, the kind of responses we heard were, oh, okay. That sounds good. Just wanted to kind of know what's going on. So there was no one that showed up to formally be like, I am here to provide public comment that this should not happen, which we got those kind of sentiments the first time around. Truthfully, we did. And those of you that were at some of those open houses know that it was a much different atmosphere. Whereas these were a completely peaceful atmosphere with folks just trying to find out what's going on, and we gave them that information. One thing we did develop for these open houses that we've now migrated to our website are the frequently asked question sheets, which we put out on your tables for you so you can take a look at them. As folks continue to have questions, we just continue to put these documents on the CPZ website. So it is a place that you can communicate to others. Hey, if you have a bunch of questions, go take a look at the CPZ website. If you get to the Marathon County website, all you have to type in the search bar is CPZ or animal waste, and it pops right up there for you. But again, what we just want to communicate to you is that what we are hearing from folks out in the communities and on farm is that this is not much of a heavy lift for most farms. What we are asking now and have come up with compromises is because this is common sense doable solutions for most folks. So we feel encouraged by that. It's a little bit funny, as a conservationist, we have so much education and outreach. It's a huge part of our career. And, when we have these big turnouts, it's always great to say, yes, is this successful, so much turnout. And so this is probably the first time in my career where there's kind of low turnouts and you almost feel a little bit happy thinking, I'm so glad there's not a bunch of people that are here upset at this meeting. What a treat. So it was great to experience that and feel that. And, almost a year ago now when we were first talking about restrictions, I think I've communicated to you before, I was receiving hundreds of phone calls. I was spending so many hours on the phone, answering emails, getting letters, which we shared with you. I have gotten 2 phone calls this time around, and both of them, again, were people just asking questions. And that's because for these open houses, we advertise them and mail them to about 2,000 people. So to get 2 phone calls out of that from 2,000 people is incredible, I think. So we just want to be transparent with what we're hearing, what we're receiving. We're not holding back any information from you. Some of you were at these open houses and got to experience them yourself. So that's where we're at. Before I move on to some other topics here, do we have any questions or comments about open houses or what was communicated there or what we've been hearing? Just to make sure we don't skim over any questions or comments. Nope. Okay. We'll keep it rolling. So Matt, we'll let you talk on this.
So with nutrient management and the winter spraying license, everybody that we talked to really has been in support of this, trying to get more nutrient management out in the Marathon County. We've had a lot of good discussions with people at multiple meetings and farmer work group on this, and really trying to get either people to have winter spreading license if they're putting manure out there in the winter, or the bigger push really from the work group, the kind of consensus was to try to get more nutrient management out there if possible. So one thing that we have talked about a little bit was what the fee is going to be. And one good suggestion that we received was, instead of making the fee a flat rate per year, having it on a per acre basis for the farms.
And we understand that we really need to kind of take a deeper dive into what the fee schedule would look like with you all. In conversation, it has kind of felt like, we'll have the ordinance go forward. Since there's such a somewhat lengthy delayed implementation period, we would have time to figure out the details of, what's all included in that winter spreading license, what the fees would be. Conversationally, we have said the last couple of meetings, what about a fee of $200 for a 4-year permit, which would be $50 a year. Just like Matt said, when we have mentioned that to our work group and then also to folks in the open houses, a continual sentiment we've received is, if the goal is to encourage nutrient management plans over buying a permit or a license, then you need to make that fee higher than $50 a year. And that is something that our work group was very adamant about, along with individual people that we've talked to. So that's, we don't have to make a decision on that today, but that's just something to think about. And also, that is a great idea that we recently received that input from a farmer of what if we charged by the acre? So because it will take a lot. There's a big difference in staff time that it'll take to help create maps if you're helping someone with a farm with 50 acres versus 500 acres. That's quite the time difference. So hopefully we can work together to strike a happy medium of what seems fair, what could maybe work out, like dependent on farm size, like some of our other permits are, and then how can we make sure that we're encouraging nutrient management planning and not just, you know, allowing people an easy out to try, because I mean, at the end of the day, what our farmer work group felt is it's kind of a waste of money to buy a license when you can just invest that into a nutrient management plan and get actual data that would support your farm operations out of it. You know, you're not really getting as much of a helpful product out of spending money on a license as you are of investing that into a nutrient management plan. And we could talk all day about that, but that's just something that we wanted to kind of give you as food for thought today.
Well, like I mentioned just previously, is that our classes for nutrient management really, the time that the farmer puts in is the only real investment for it. I mean, we have the means that they can have their soil samples paid for, the class is all supported, and they're getting a reimbursement to come to the class. So the white paper, that's a document that you guys have received there. It's 20 some odd pages. That's really the summary of all these other plans and documentation that we have listed here. It's land and water plan, it's lake management plans, it's the TMDL information from the DNR. It's all that information tied together, and we put that together in support of why these ordinance changes are needed. There's scientific information there validating, you know, how much we're contributing as a county and what our estimated reductions are with what we're proposing.
The full copy of the white paper is also on the CPC website. So again, this is a publicly available document. You can direct folks there. The full document is 845 pages. So if anyone is looking for evidence of our reasoning behind this, they have 845 pages of it available to them on their website that they're welcome to read. But as Matt said, the first 20 some pages are the narrative that we created to support this. So statutorily, when we are submitting an ordinance like this to DNR and the Department of Ag, we cannot ask them to approve an ordinance like this unless we are providing scientific data to support it. So even if we wanted to pass this and have the local support to do it, we couldn't do it without the scientific evidence, and the legal counsels within those two state agencies have to read, review, and approve our scientific evidence that we have submitted to them. So it's all based on science, it's all based on data. We have it there, and I'm proud that our work group worked together to come up with that data and that our staff worked very hard to put that together into a paper that will hopefully also be a very helpful historical document for this county as well. We did make sure in the introduction to tie in the story of how we worked together with the work group to come up with these compromises. So we sent that out to the work group. Hopefully they can take a look at it as well. But we do go into, you know, not only the scientific reasoning and data behind, you know, what we're doing, but we do also tell the story of, you know, what's been going on with Marathon County Conservation over the last several decades. We do have a very unique situation that, I mean, you've all been on this journey with us now for about a year and a half when we've, you know, talked about how agriculture was formed in Marathon County and why we do have unique hydrology here that moves nutrients quickly into our ditches and then into our streams. It's, you know, it's because of the history that we have here. And I love that we've come up with solutions that marry together agriculture and the environment. I love that we've gotten to a place where we all believe and have found a path forward that agriculture and the environment can coexist together in Marathon County. And I'm very, very confident that this plan will, you know, provide hopefully a framework for others around Wisconsin to say that, you know, if this can work in Marathon County, we're facing similar situations in our county. Can we use a framework like this here too? So, so please take a look at that white paper and let others know that it's there for them to look at as well. So what we wanted to spend just a few minutes talking with you about today really focuses around the buffers. So as you all know, we have been in communication with the Department of Ag, or DATCP, for a very long time regarding this. We did not provide them with a draft of our ordinance until a couple months ago when we finalized it and then shared it with you. So around that same time we shared it with you, about 3 months ago, we shared it with them. Their legal counsel has really not taken a deep dive into our draft until recently. So we are hearing from DATCAP not only weekly, but almost daily with things that we are just learning as well. And as a reminder, we are in close communication with our corporation counsel, Brian Desmond, and then also the attorney that we hired from Stafford Rosenbaum in Madison, who is an expert in this field. And even having, the expert counsel of Brian and Jane on our side, we're still learning certain parts of state statutes that take us down a path that's a little bit different than what we originally envisioned. So what we learned from DATCAP just this morning is that the way that the buffer part of our ordinance is laid out, we actually would have to offer cost share to folks that we are asking to put those buffers in, which would be essentially everyone, because we have written the ordinance in a way that if you have a stream on your property, we need you to put a 35-foot buffer there if there's not one already there. And so that was not the vision that the work group had in mind of having to cost share every single buffer in Marathon County. It's just something that we came to a local agreement that this would be good for all of our streams, and it probably would realistically take us 100 years to get these buffers in place if we had to cost share everyone. So in talking with DATCAP, we do feel that there is potentially a pathway to not have to cost share all of these and just let our local ordinance stay local and be the law of the land as designed. That being said, they are conferring with their legal counsel regarding a potential pathway that we found, and we do not have the answer to what their legal counsel will say since we just learned this morning. And so we feel confident that what we would like to do with the buffers is still in the mainstream of what we want to do and can do, but what we would like to recommend to you today is to potentially delay your vote on this draft ordinance until the January meeting, where we can give you all of the specifics of what we hear from the DATCAP legal counsel in case you should have a choice to make on how we would like to move forward with this portion of the ordinance. We fully understand that the buffers were an important third in the 3 parts of the compromise to reducing phosphorus and improving surface water quality in Marathon County. And it's especially important because it is a part of the ordinance that encompasses all cropland. So we're seeing more and more farmers move to a cash grain rotation and move away from owning livestock. And the livestock owners on our work group were very adamant, rightfully so, that we need to include the cash grain folks as well too, who also potentially can be contributing to phosphorus issues. And so it would seem unfair if we somehow would cut this out and move forward with the other 2 pieces of the ordinance. So we just need to work very hard in the coming weeks to try to find a way to piece this all together and then come back to you in the next meeting and perhaps give you options of a different pathway, or say, we can move forward as planned after hearing more details from the state. So that's what we kind of wanted to fill you in today, because I think, we can probably all agree that if we're going to do this, we want to do it right? If we're going to do it, we want to do it right the first time. And so if that means waiting another couple of weeks, that may be for the best. But, one thing we've had to continually remind ourselves throughout this process is that we're forging new ground. There is no ordinance like this in the state of Wisconsin. And so the folks that we're working with at DATCAP related to these buffers, there hasn't been an ordinance developed related to buffers in over 20 years in Wisconsin. So all the folks there that were part of the last buffer ordinance in the 90s are all retired. So it's all folks, even younger than us, that are there trying to navigate how to interpret state statutes and what that means compared to our local ordinance. So everyone's a newbie in this. We're all trying to work together and get it done, but we just want to be very, very careful to make sure that, should it be challenged, it would hold up in court. Or should folks have some nervousness about certain areas, we wouldn't need to worry because it's rock solid, and every single attorney from state agencies, locally, our hired attorney, everyone agrees it's perfect. So That is the news on the buffers. I'm sorry for the little bit of a surprise, but, and this slide was not in your packet, because again, we just learned this a couple of hours ago, and it's one of those situations where you get off the phone and you're like, well, okay, there is a meeting in a couple of hours, and this is a really big deal, so it is a stressful situation, but it would be absolutely silly to not communicate this to you today and ask if you wouldn't mind, hitting the pause button for just a couple weeks. Until we can get you more information, because informed people are happy people.
I would be in favor of pushing this down the road if the committee would agree. Yeah, we'll push it down the road. One other just quick question I had listening. So if a farmer were to choose to pay for the license instead of getting a nutrient management plan, what pool or pot would that funding go into?
Well,
Good question.
I think that's a good question for Director Ms. Skimmons, because I don't get to decide where permit money goes into in our department.
I believe it would just be credited to our department as a revenue that would then offset our department costs, so.
Okay.
But
Yeah, that would be something that we'd address with the committee and with the full board through the budget process. And I would fully expect that you would say any revenues garnered through that program be used for conservation-related activities.
Yes,
Oh,
yes.
I could get behind that. A wonderful solution, yeah.
Any other questions on this ordinance? Supervisor Seafowl.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Getting back to the fee part of it, I know we're pushing for nutrient management programs, but that's a decision up to the farmer. But I don't think we have the right to put a fee on them to spread their manure. I mean, to me, that's ludicrous. I cannot go along with that fee, period. And to tell them that, hey, you gotta have a permit to spread your manure I don't agree with that. I really don't. That's my opinion, but.
In my opinion, then, I see no reason you wouldn't want a nutrient management plan. To me, that's just, when you look at the numbers, you gotta sit through the meetings, but you paid really well to sit through the meetings. Besides that, it makes your operation way more profitable. I don't see the threat. I'm not big on government involvement either, but, I really appreciate the farmers, but I don't understand why you'd want a farm and not have a nutrient management plan. Then you don't need the permit. So to me, yeah, and I don't understand why they're so against the nutrient management plan. It's a moneymaker, it takes a little time, probably make your farm more successful, and then you don't need to permit. And that's something, the majority of them do anyway. So we're down to a very few that are, when you look at, like Christie said, you look at when they started this whole thing, they had hundreds of people coming to these meetings and upset. In the end, there's nobody there, so apparently they did a great job working hand in hand with all sides to try and make everybody happy. And so I don't understand why you wouldn't want a nutrient management plan. To me, that's a no-brainer, then you don't need to permit. That's just my opinion.
I'll just add to Supervisor Seafolt. As a reminder, it's not a license to spread manure. It's only on frozen soils. Only on frozen soils. When we first started talking, we were talking about restricting the application of liquid manure on frozen soils across the county. So this is just liquid manure, not solid, and it's just on frozen soils. And the reason we want people to have a plan in place for that is because we spent months talking about the Wisconsin-specific research that shows when you are applying liquid manure on frozen soils, almost 100% of that liquid manure ends up in our streams. Almost 100%. And so there are fields where it is safe to spread liquid manure on potentially in the winter. There are, but let's work together to make sure you're following a map using scientific data to use just those fields. And right now, not everyone does. So this seems like very low-hanging fruit to ask people to use a map that takes into account things like soils, slope, what's underneath the, the snow or ice, or what type of crop is under there.
Streams, wells. I mean, we've had several complaints where guys spread in the winter, they spread close to somebody's well, and all of a sudden there's manure in the yard sitting around the well, and it's not a good situation.
We talk about in our white paper, the last 2 complaints we've received for winter spreading applications of liquid manure, and those were 23, 2024. There was about 1 million gallons of liquid manure from just those 2 complaints that ended up in our local streams. And those were just complaints that were called in. Obviously, in a county of our size, there's hundreds of times similar things could have happened that no one picks up the phone to call us. So I think information like that is what we need to approach the right frame of mind to think, why would we ask someone to get a license like this? Just on frozen soils, could you work with us to use a map that is science-backed to make sure you're putting it on the right fields? We're not saying you can't do it. We're just saying, can you make sure you're putting this in the right place so it doesn't enter our streams? That's all we're saying.
But you are still charging them $50, not to spread during February and March, and in February and March, if you have straw or substance with it, it's not liquid, you still can spread. But why do we have to put a permit, a $50 permit, for those that are under, the limit, the small farmers, to basically say they can spread their manure during the February, March? I don't go with, I agree with not spreading in February, March. I agree with that. But we're basically talking pretty close with liquid manure. And that's what's causing the problems right now is the liquid manure. Those farmers are very adamant about not spreading liquid manure during the winter. You talk, with your capos, and I mean, they're very adamant about it. But for the small farmer, milking 60 cows, and then goes out and spreads his manure every day. Well, if you got your cows in a barn, you're going to have some type of bedding with it. I don't see pure liquid manure coming out of the barn. At least it didn't when I was farming. But I don't agree with having a $50 fee a year to tell me that I can't spread during February, March. I can't agree with that.
And I guess what I could add, throughout all this, we've heard the terms slurry, liquid manure. I guess what is the definition of each, and where would the cutoff be as far as, because originally is my understanding that it was going to be the mid-sized farms affected by this. So I can definitely see Supervisor Seefeld's point here. If we have a small farm, what's their line in the sand on whether they have liquid manure, slurry, and how is this going to affect them?
So usually, when you think of liquid manure, it's usually something that's pumpable. So in the ordinance, the way we have it defined is the same way that DNR has it defined. It's as a 12% solid manure. Now, a lot of manure from like daily haul type situations, if they're using like a straw bedding, they're going to probably fall into a semi-solid type manure. So not going to be affected. But the stuff that's actually pumpable and can flow, that's going to be your slurry or your liquid manure. That's going to be like what we have defined as 12% solids or less. It's something that can actually move. It doesn't hold, you know, if you put it out and try to stack it, because we do see some guys try to stack some of this, loosely stacked this type of manure, and it just ends up being a big blob that ends up flowing off the fields.
And the only restrictions are for farms 300 animal units and greater. So small farms can spread every single month of the year, year round. They just need to follow that map that they would have in the license. They do not have to get a license. They can come get a nutrient management plan and we will give them $440 to write it themselves. And then if they want, we will cost share them $40 an acre on top of that to write a plan.
Plus their soil samples are paid for also, so.
And we will help them physically collect the soil samples. I do not know what else we could possibly do to make this easier for people.
Small farms in Marathon County that probably will not get a nutrient management plan because their beliefs. I'll just leave it at that.
We actually do work with Amish and Mennonite community quite a bit. We do have other classes that are, where they just come in and we actually do handwritten nutrient management plans with them, so. And up in several different areas, we've worked with them on getting nutrient management plans written.
Supervisor Kroll?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Kirsty, I'm curious about timeline. I love timelines. I always ask about them. So if this is going to be, I guess, delayed a month, and if there's potential changes, would any of those changes need to go back to any of the stakeholders or people like involved in this? So I guess like you walk me through what might happen with specific scenarios.
Yes, so what I have up on the screen are the implementation timelines that we previously communicated a month or two ago to you, that this is what was suggested from our farmer work group. These are the dates that we landed on as we talked through what is fair, giving enough people to have time that if they need to connect with the grant resource, if they need to connect with a conservationist or the USDA, what gives them enough time. And so, you know, these timelines, I would not anticipate us or the farmer work group suggesting to our elected officials to look at changing these anytime soon. I think even if this is delayed slightly to make sure that we have the buffers in a rock solid position, I think these timelines should be able to stay. I think depending on what we hear from the legal folks at DATCAP, we may have a slightly different internal timeline than what we've been talking about in previous conversations. So I know, you know, the end goal was going to try to be to like come up with a firm decision here, you know, fourth quarter of this year. And then in an ideal world, we could maybe look at talking to the county board about this late first quarter of 2026. We knew all along that we would be subject to a 90-day review by both DNR and DATCAP, because that's what the state statutes say they get, is 90 days to take a look at our scientific data and the ordinance and make a decision. But what we've since learned from them is that DATCAP also needs to get approval from the state of Wisconsin Land and Water Conservation Board. So that's the same board that we went down and got approval from earlier this year for a 5-year review of Marathon County's land and water plan. So the good news is we recently talked with them and they really like us, I think, because they gave Marathon County a lot of really good comments about good work that's happening here. So we'll be fresh in their minds, since it was just like a meeting or two ago that we met with them. So we would not anticipate it being a hurdle to go before the Land and Water Conservation Board, but they do not meet monthly. So they meet again in February and April of 2026 are their next 2 meetings. And so in an ideal world, we could somehow get onto the February agenda, but we're understanding that may be wishful thinking at this point. So we may be looking at being on the April land and water agenda with them and just playing it by ear. So we may still be talking about this next spring. And I would love to continue working with all of you. So I really hope that our ERC doesn't change too much after April, because we've been on a long journey together and we've all received a lot of education in this area on, I mean, you all could basically do our job at this point with all that you've learned about manure and nutrient management and all of that. So I think, I mean, I had let, Chair Ritter know right before the meeting that we can stay in communication with him leading up to the January meeting to see if maybe you all could still vote in January to approve the draft ordinance. But as of this very moment, I just don't know if that will be possible. I don't see a lengthy delay, but it may change a little bit. And we may have to talk about this again in January, and it's a choose your own adventure by the ERC on how you'd like to move forward, dependent on the couple different options we would have.
Tom?
I just have a question for Rick and his concerns. If our incentive is to get more farmers to do nutrient management plan without that fee, what's their incentive to do that? It would just stay the number that we have now.
Well, does every farmer that gets close to the age, up to the age to where they're gonna, turn it over or retire, but do we have to, I shouldn't say force, but do we have to force our farmers to have a nutrient management program? I don't think that's the right thing to do. I really don't. You can't force somebody to do something. And if they don't want to have a nutrient management program, that's up to them. That's not up to us. That's up to them. And getting back to the $50 fee, it still didn't answer my question. Why do we have to have a $50 fee? Just because they're not going to have a nutrient management program? That's not fair to me. So, what I got to say.
Chair Gibbs.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, Christie, I understand there's a lot of discussion yet to be had on what form the licensing fee potentially will be, whether looked at an acreage. But I guess the question I have is, so when somebody comes in and gets a license to spread in the wintertime, what is staff going to have to do to be able to understand and provide the information to the farmer to analyze where they can spread? So because I'm trying to understand, there's going to be additional staff work here if we go down this road, and what is that requirement going to be as far as what staff's going to have to look at, what they're going to have to recommend, what the potential requirements are going to be?
Sure, I'm happy to address that. I'll start out the answer to that by saying this, just for clarity. The state of Wisconsin already does have in-state statutes that every farmer in Wisconsin who is mechanically applying nutrients of any kind, whether that is manure or fertilizer, is required to have a nutrient management plan. And that has been in statutes for many years. And it doesn't say it's optional, it says they are required to have a nutrient management plan. The caveat to that, however, is that it cannot be enforced, and we would be the enforcement mechanism, a land conservation department. It cannot be enforced unless an offer of cost share is provided to that farmer, which we do. We do that on farms where there are resource concerns, where people are spreading manure so heavily where it's like a pond of manure on those fields. We do approach them and say, let's work together on a nutrient management plan. We'll give you $40 an acre to get one going, but obviously we need to have some discussions about the rates that are allowed on these fields, et cetera. Okay, so that rule has been there for forever. So I wanted to clarify that, this is not something internal or a local decision we are coming up with. Wisconsin has had that law for many years. But the enforcement mechanism we have in hopes that people would get a nutrient management plan with the amount of money we get from the state of Wisconsin every year to fund nutrient management, it would take us 50 years from today to cost share the rest of the farms that are needed to have a nutrient management plan. So part of this is, you know, we're happy to still, we cost share many people every year, but we cannot get the other 40% of folks in 1 year. So, you know, we're hoping to slowly continue to cost share, but we have this in place in hopes that people will get one, fulfill their legal obligation to have a nutrient management plan, but we will help them get to that spot. Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say, so cost sharing is one of them, but there's other things that require nutrient management, such as having an animal waste permit, a manure storage pit, if you're in different programs such as farmland preservation. So there's other things besides just cost sharing where it requires nutrient management. That's just one of them.
Yeah, thank you. That's an excellent point, Matt. Yeah, it's not every situation you have to offer cost share if someone needs one. So if you want to, you know, build a manure pit on your farm, you're going to need a nutrient management plan, and we don't have to pay you for it. It's just a requirement. In terms of, you know, what would it look like in staff time or staff tasks to fulfill the obligations of providing someone with a winter spreading license, it would be a similar process to working with someone on a nutrient management plan, but it would be like the light version of it. So we would anticipate still using nutrient management software called Snap Plus, which develops a beautiful set of maps showing all of the restrictions on the properties, meaning it'll show where, you know, a well is after receiving some of that information from folks. It'll show where the setbacks are from a stream, setbacks from a pond, all of that. And it's already preloaded with information on soil types and slopes and everything. We need to take some time with the person who would be coming in to get one of these licenses to find out what type of crops they had on certain fields, where the wells are, all of that. So it would likely be, depending on the size of a farm, you know, ranging from maybe 1 hour of time spent with the landowner to maybe a little bit more than an hour of time spent with them, but, you know, maybe 2 to 3 hours of staff time creating maps and then providing them a product afterwards for a larger farm. You know, I would envision in a small farm, for a small farm, we probably could be a one-stop shop. You come in, you talk with us, an hour or so, bada bing, bada boom, you're out the door with your set of maps. We wouldn't be able to do that for 500-acre farm, not in an hour. That's a, you know, we'll call you when we're ready sort of situation. But always, you know, at minimum, you know, 1 to 2 hours of staff time, ranging to, you know, maybe even up to half a day of staff time if someone needs a farm visit, et cetera, which we're certainly willing to do, but we didn't necessarily envision, you know, basing time spent on it. Yeah. But we, again, that's why we like the idea of perhaps the acreage format for pricing, because it would be a lot cheaper for a smaller farm potentially. We do hope there aren't any really big farms that don't have a nutrient management plan yet. I know most of them do, but anything that would be extremely time consuming with large acreage, there's probably very few scenarios like that still exist in Marathon County. Hopefully that answers your question. Okay.
I guess it's something that I'm concerned of. This was, we seem to be talking about small farms a lot right now.
Yes.
This was originally sold to only affect mid-sized farms. How did we morph into only affecting mid-sized farms into now we're talking more about small farms? Because we need to help protect the small farmers in Marathon County.
Yeah, we love our small farms too. I think, you know, in the work group, we didn't feel that anything that we have come up in the compromise related to needing a nutrient management plan or putting in a harvestable buffer would necessarily be a hardship for a small farm. The small farmers that we had on the work group communicated to us that that would not be a hardship for small farms. And so that's why we didn't exclude small farms from nutrient management or from the buffers. We excluded small farms from the winter spreading restrictions because we heard a great deal of feedback from the work group and from our community that it would be a hardship for the small farms. And so that's why that was removed. But the other ones remain because there was complete unity in our work group, unanimous unity that this was doable for farms of all size.
Any other questions, comments? Okay. Is that all you guys have for us then?
Did you want to talk any more about the implementation timeline today, or did you want to save that for a future meeting?
I guess that would be up
That
to
was the one other
Supervisor
thing
Kroll.
we
He likes the timelines.
Yes, yes.
Okay, we can cover that in the next meeting.
Okay. Okay, that sounds good.
Okay. So we're all good?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right, we'll move on to the next item 8. Our next meeting is January 6th, 2026, and future agenda items. Committee members are asked to bring ideas for future discussion. Item 8B, do we have any announcements, requests, or correspondence? Looks like none. So item 9, I guess entertain a motion to adjourn. Supervisor Drabeck with the motion. Supervisor Seifelt with the second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? We are adjourned.
All right. I put my hand on one.